Under your view, a profit corporation could be forced, in principle, there are some statutes on the books now which would prevent it, but could be forced in principle to pay for abortions.
No. I think, as you said, the law now is to the contrary.
But your reasoning would permit that.
Well, I think that, I don't think that that's, I think it would depend on the law and it would depend on the entity. It certainly wouldn't be true, I think, for religious nonprofits. It certainly wouldn't be true for a church.
I'm talking about a profit corporation. You say profit corporations just don't have any standing to vindicate the religious rights of their shareholders and owners.
Well, I think that if it were for a for-profit corporation and if such a law like that were enacted, then you're right. Under our theory that the for-profit corporation wouldn't have an ability to sue. But there is no law like that on the books. In fact, the law is the opposite.
I'm sorry, I lost track of that. There's no law in the books that does what?
That makes a requirement of the kind that Justice Kennedy hypothesized. The law is the opposite.
Well, flesh out a little more. There is no law on the books that does what?
That requires for-profit corporations to provide abortions.
What if a law like that...
Isn't that what we were talking about in terms of their religious beliefs? One of the religious beliefs is that they have to pay for these 4 methods of contraception that they believe provide abortions. I thought that's what we had before us.
It is their sincere belief, and we don't question that. But I will say, and I do think it is important that I say with all respect, that is the judgment that they make. It is not the judgment that federal law or state law reflects. Federal law and state law, which do preclude funding for abortions, don't consider these particular forms of contraceptive to be abortion. With all due respect, I would say that I think that, we've got about 2 million women who rely on the IUD as a method of birth control in this country. I don't think that they are engaged in abortion in doing that. It is their belief. It's sincere. We respect it. But it isn't a belief that we think is reflected in the federal or state law or our tradition of where that line is drawn. And I do think that is what makes this a difficult case. I agree. And if you disagree with our position at the threshold that corporations, that even though you have a situation, and we acknowledge you can have situations in which a small group of tightly knit individuals own and operate a corporation where there's appeal to that, to the argument that they ought to recognize a claim of exercising religion in those circumstances. The problem, I would submit, is with the implication of doing it. The implication for entanglement and making judgments when you move past that group, the administratability problems, and the problems of inviting the kinds of claims that are predictably going to impose harms on third parties.